Hi friends, good morning. It's a gorgeous day here and welcome to Eyes of My Heart. I'm going to have one more drink of coffee and then we're going to jump in. I need to share something today that's caused me a little bit of trepidation, but I feel like it's time. One of the things I told myself when I started this YouTube channel, or I should say before I publicly published it, because it's been curating for a couple of years, is that I have to be completely honest, authentic, and vulnerable, or why even bother doing it? And so I'm going to take that risk and be honest and vulnerable right now. I still get triggered and I still have fear because I think about what I share here on this channel is I know it's going to be judged perhaps or criticized by some people who are near and dear to my heart, who also grew up in very evangelical holiness denominations. And their journey looks very different than mine. And all I know is that I have to be faithful and I have to be true to the Spirit of God in my life. And you have to be faithful and true to the Spirit of God in your life. Growing up in this evangelical kind of fundamental environment, I learned very quickly that it's easy to be judged. And so I also learned very quickly that much of what was happening in my heart, I just kind of pondered it in my heart. I didn't speak about it because the few times that I tried, it kind of hit a brick wall. And so my environment was still this evangelical environment. I was very involved, in my churches. I worked on staff. I worked in volunteer positions on church boards. I've worked as a chaplain to pastoral staff in an evangelical denomination. I've worked as an adjunct instructor in evangelical university. And I still love the church. But I have had, and I'm going to use this term because I've come to love this term, a renovation of my heart. And it started back in my early 20s. But I would say it's only been in the latter years that I have been able to find a voice. And it hasn't been because the fear is gone. It's just been because there comes a point where you realize not everybody's going to approve, agree, and that's okay. Because I can't live my life for the applause or the approval of even those nearest and dearest to me, those in my faith community. I have to follow after the Spirit of Christ in my life. And sometimes that I feel prompted to speak, and other times I feel prompted to just be still and quiet, because I'm not trying to cause you to have my experience. But I want us, even with all of our differences, to be able to encourage one another, to keep our heart eyes open. Because that is what changed my life, was when I began to see with the eyes of my heart and less with the eyes of my intellect. Both are important, but the eyes of the heart inform, for me anyway, had to learn to inform the eyes of my head. And that's when some people will use this term, and I know it's a trigger term for many in the evangelical world, a deconstruction. Some people don't like that. And I've heard people say, oh, those people who are deconstructing their faith, they are just angry people. Some of them may be, and I would agree with that. Some that I've listened to are angry. And it does feel like there's a chip on their shoulder, and maybe they have a good reason for that. I don't know. But mine isn't from anger. I loved growing up in the churches that I did. That is what introduced me to Jesus. Those churches, especially in my childhood, I have one in particular that I love, and it was the church in Ashland, Kentucky. And it's interesting because that one was not part of a denomination. It didn't have this whole hierarchy. It was an independent church. It was still evangelical. But that church, I felt the most warmth the most love, the most safety in my life. So I am not throwing out my roots. My roots have gone deeper, and I feel like I'm stronger in that I'm flourishing in my faith, and I don't have all the answers. And I think maybe that is what opened the door to the flourishing. We walk by faith, not by sight, not by knowing everything. And it took a courageous step to say, Lord, open the eyes of my heart, because I had to step back and reflect. I had to bring questions into the light and wrestle with some things that I had been taught. But this is freedom for me. And so I was talking to Mark the other night, and I said, I'm surprised at how triggered I am as I thought about, hitting that public button and taking everything off of private and hitting it public. I said, I thought I was over that fear of what other people thought. But apparently I'm not. So I'm just going to be honest and share that. So I understand that this isn't your journey. This is my song. This is my story. And it's real to me. And I don't want to hide behind it. I don't want to pretend that it's something else. It is unfolding, and I'm just stepping out to kind of do this pilgrimage together and invite you to come along with me, even if we hold different viewpoints. It's okay. But I also believe that there are probably those who have had a similar environment that I grew up in, that was fundamental and evangelical, and maybe the way you perceived that affected you in a similar way that I did, and you've had to go through some sort of renovation of your heart. I hope that it can speak encouragement into your life. There's room at the table of God for all. I have no doubt about that. And it does hurt me to see infighting and people spending more time debating and pointing fingers and condemning one another and saying, well, you can't really be a follower of Christ if you vote that way, or if you uphold that social cause, or if you do this. It's like, lay it all down, people. Lay it all down. We're getting caught up in things that are going to divide and hurt and wound one another. I'm not saying give up your personal opinions. We're all on a journey. The only encouragement I would give to you, and I hope that you would give to me, is keep our heart eyes open and bring all of our questions into the light. I think of the early church. They dealt with the same things that we do. I mean, here was Jesus, the living word, and I did a video on this very recently, who came before the religious leaders, the ones who were steeped in hierarchy and in doctrine and in theology, and really thought that the box they had for God was the correct one. And Jesus flipped it upside down. And he would often say in his parables, let those who have eyes see and those who have ears hear. He left it open for it to be interpreted the way that soul needed to interpret it, the way the Spirit of God would speak to us if the eyes of our heart were open. And when he stood before the Pharisees, the living word in flesh, and they didn't see him, and they condemned him, he said to them, it's because you don't have the love of God in your heart. You have all the knowledge, and you think it's right, but you don't have the love of God in your heart. And that goes back with the Apostle Paul, his prayer for that early church. May the eyes of your heart be opened. May you be rooted and established in what? Not doctrine, not theology, not whether to be circumcised or uncircumcised, because that was a huge issue back then. In love. Let that lead the way. Let that lead the way. And I don't understand why we're so filled with fear. This love of God, the perfect love of God, casts out fear. And if we can lead with love, I think a lot of changes, very positive changes, could happen. So I just wanted to share that today. I'm not angry. I love the church. I love the roots that I grew up with. Have I had to unlearn some things? Absolutely. And it's been through love, through the eyes of love. It's been liberating. It's been like I said before, there's an old hymn called "This Is My Story, This Is My Song." And that is it for me. And I have to be faithful to the love of God, the Spirit of God in my life. I still attend an evangelical church. Do I agree with everything? No. And that's okay. Have I always felt safe, to share my story in those kind of environments? No. And sometimes I just am silent. And sometimes I speak. But it's not to get approval or applause. And I've worked, like I said, in churches, and I've seen how sometimes even pastors, their soul gets shut down as they begin to grow deeper, because some of what is being revealed to them bumps up against the alignment of the doctrine. And my heart goes out to them. But all I can say is always choose Jesus. Always follow after the love of Christ and the Spirit of God in your heart, no matter what. Count it all as loss for the sake of Christ and being faithful and true to that love that is guiding you. Lead with love, not with fear, not with doctrine, not with dogma. Those things I'm not saying they're wrong, and I'm not saying throw them out. But if we can't step back at places in our life and reflect and reevaluate and possibly allow the Spirit to renovate our hearts, we're going to stay stuck, and we're going to end up doing harm to ourselves and to others. So those are my thoughts on that. I just felt like I needed to share that because I still struggle with that fear of being judged, of sharing deeply from my heart. And I catch myself sometimes saying, well, maybe I shouldn't say that because, they'll interpret it this way or they'll think it's that. And this has been a journey for me, learning to lay it down. So I want to read one thing real quickly before I jump off here today. No, I should have left the book open because, here it is, thankfully. It just opened right to it. This is a book by Henry Nouwen, and it's simply called Spiritual Direction. And I got it because when I was going through my training to be certified in spiritual companionship and spiritual direction, I've always loved Henry. And so this book has been a huge help for me. And I want to just read something really quick, and then I'll let you go. It's entitled An Invitation to Return. Dear friend, being the beloved is the origin and the fulfillment of life in the Spirit. I say this because as soon as we catch a glimpse of this truth, we are put on a journey in search of the fullness of that truth, and we will not rest until we can rest in that truth. From the moment we claim the truth of being the beloved, we are faced with the call to become who we are. Becoming the beloved is the great spiritual journey we have to make. Augustine's words, "My soul is restless until it rests in you, O God," captures well this journey. That speaks volumes to me. My soul is restless until it rests in you, O God, not in doctrine, not in dogma, not in theology, not in tradition, not in rules. Again, I'm not saying they're all wrong, but if that's where we're seeking to find our approval, our rest, or our identity, we're not going to find it there. That I am always searching for God, always struggling to discover the fullness of love, and always yearning for the complete truth, tells me that I have already been given a taste of God, of love, and of truth. I can only look for something that I have to some degree already found. From the moment we claim the truth of being the beloved, we are faced with the call to become who we are. And my soul is restless until it finds its rest in you. Jesus said, "Come unto me, all ye who are weary and heavy laden," and I think that's part of that restlessness. and I will give you rest. You will find rest for your soul in me, not in anything out there external, including the church. Excuse me. Don't throw away the church. Don't get angry and cut yourself off from it. It's like throwing the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. And again, I'm speaking from my experience. When my prayer became, God, show me who you are, not who I've been told you are, and not even who I think you are. And show me who I am, not who I've been told I am or who I think I am. Something opened up within me that has begun a pilgrimage, a journey, where I've had to lay down a lot of things, that dying to the old self, to discovering this new abundant life that is constantly unfolding in Christ, in love. And I'm beginning to see that love is broader, higher, wider, deeper than I ever could have imagined. That's where I want my roots to go. So thank you for listening to me. I know we don't always agree on things, and that's okay. We offer each other grace. We fan into flame the love of God. So go out and have an amazing day. Know one thing, because this is the one thing that transformed everything that I ever thought I knew. I am the beloved of God, and so are you. Live in that truth. Discover what it means. Search it out. Reflect. Let a renovation of your heart be continual until you take your last breath. God bless you guys. Take care.